Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here, and this topic today is just really fascinating, and I wanted to say that anybody in the audience has the opportunity, because when I look at Peter's background, and I think we all have a chance because he's very different to what he pivoted to. So, Peter, I'd just like to ask you to share a little bit about who you are, and then how you got into the e-commerce, stumbled into this first.
Thank you, Amrit, and thank you, Startup Grind, and everybody for coming here today. It's amazing what a big turnout. Really honored, almost a little bit nervous. Who am I? Yeah, my name is Peter Luxenburg. I'm from Sweden originally. I've been living in Asia for the past decade. I moved to China to live there for a few years before moving on to Hong Kong. I started with e-commerce and then Amazon predominantly 5 years ago, and been building and developing my own brand and also consultancy next to it. About a year ago I sold the brand that I built on Amazon to an American company, and asked myself, what am I supposed to do now? Should I repeat, do the same, start a new brand in another category? Or should I focus on helping others? And since helping others is something we all want to do, and something that you actually can when you know something that others don't know and they ask you for the help, then you can give it, then I decided I will turn my focus on to consulting and helping others.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask you how you got into the Amazon game, and where was it that you started to see the opportunity? I mean, it's just only 5 years ago, right?
That's correct. And
so you exited 4 years later. So how many people have actually built a real brand and business and been able to have the opportunity to sell in 4 years' time? No? Has anybody got an e-commerce store? Thank you. And are you doing anything that is with the players of Amazon right now? The ones who've responded? No? Good. So I guess that's actually also a good way, because that's another distribution channel for you guys already in the game. And I think that, Peter, if you actually just share with me, what were some of the starting points in considering to get into this? Because you being a mechanical engineer, and you had your boots on the ground in 2007 in China, doing completely different things. So what 5 years ago would have sent you back to 2014. So can you share what pivoted you to this game?
So I guess I'm a guy of curiosity, so I do whatever comes in my mind. And like you said, I'm a mechanical engineer from the beginning, and been working with B2B. I was a sales guy and traveling all around the world selling, representing a Swedish brand in consumer lighting. And then I came across some old friends from the university that were living in Shenzhen, and they were starting this thing called Amazon. And I said, what is Amazon? And for me, who never had any relationship with B2C, I got curious, and they started telling me about it, and I thought, okay, why don't I give it a shot too? So that's where it all started, basically.
So, you know, there's billions of products and so much. To start off, where do you look? What was your search, and how did you walk me through some of that? When if I look at Amazon right now, I would say, where do I start? What do I sell? So
it's a very good question. So there are things that you want to sell, and there are things that you should sell. So everything I came up with that I wanted to sell was already selling, and those who were selling it were doing it pretty good. So you had to kind of navigate the Amazon platform and start looking for opportunities. And opportunities are basically products that have a relatively high search volume. There's a demand for those products. They're not always going to end up being the products that you want to sell. So you look at where's the traffic, where's the demand, and how does the product offers look like? And what could I do to that product, or what could I bring to the marketplace that makes it better for the consumer? What makes me stick out? So you have to study your competition closely. You have to read their reviews, see what people are not happy about, and negative reviews, study them, and kind of try to materialize that and address those problems in your product offers. And start off widely in the beginning, and then try to narrow down to a category which you feel comfortable with. I'm a sports guy, so I would love to sell sports things, but I ended up selling kitchen stuff, right? I mean, I didn't mind.
So in doing that, you started to look at the ratings and reviews, and you said, what can I do that's better? What was your first product?
Wine openers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
I mean, of all the billions of products that there would have been, and you started off with wine openers, which is ubiquitous, right?
Yes, it sounds a little bit too simple to be true, but it's what was existing there was a huge demand for wine openers. Wine openers is something that everybody has that in their home. Mm-hmm. Most home has, and or people have it at work. And it's something that you don't want to spend too much money on because you easily can misplace it or you lose it. So I was looking at the traffic, and it turned out to be a couple of 100,000 searches every month for wine openers. So I studied the offers that were on Amazon, and I could quickly identify that this was relatively cheap products that you could find on Alibaba or AliExpress or any other of the marketplaces in China. And the presentation was not good, poor quality images. The reviews were like, oh, this was cheap, but it's also, you get what you pay for. And it was just not attractive. It seemed that people were buying it because there was no other alternatives. And buying it in the retail store, we all know it costs much more. So
the big question is, how did you make it better?
So what I did was I quickly looked up what does this kind of wine opener that's selling so much, what does it cost? And it turned out you paid 20 cents for it, and they were charging $6 for it. So I saw this is a huge profit. So I will make an offer which is, I will bundle a kit. I will offer 3 different colors that will be suitable for men, women, or any kind of person. And I did it in a gift box, and I did those very fancy colors and made sure to have a very tight quality inspection. So every wine opener that was going out from the factory was mechanically tested to see that there was no loose parts or anything. Very simple, didn't cost me much. But that way I avoided those initial negative reviews, or the kiss of death, which people would call it in this game.
Yeah, and it seems like the pain points of, I just want to go off tangent, though I will come back to it, but doing the quality control for each one of those, did you have to physically, or did you give the specs to the factory and say, this is what I wanted to do? Because, you know, to do that physically, you having to go each time, how did you manage that part of it?
So, excuse me. So here I had the big advantage of having lived in China and being in manufacturing before. So I understood the importance of having specs that you could hand over to a third-party inspector and say, check those points. And if anything deviates from that, let me know, or put it aside. So I would hire third-party inspection companies, which are vastly available in China and relatively cost efficient. And I will give them the specs. I will give them images, and I will give them critical points to check. And although they were always saying, but why should we check all of them? Why can we not just make a standard selection, like 20 pieces out of 1,000? I would say, because this is not going to some warehouse or to some other business. This is going directly to the consumer via an online platform. So we have to make sure that we have that extra layer of checking.
So, I mean, I guess when you're looking at the product line, and then all of a sudden there's other people that are going to search and then try to copy what you've done, how did you protect yourself and your product? to competitors to copy?
So you can do that on two fronts or several fronts. One is, of course, you make an offer that is difficult to copy, right? So you either combine several factories and bundle an offer, or you protect yourself by registering your trademark. So after selling for a few months, and I saw that there was some traction, and I realized that I could sell neighboring products to that wine opener, like beer openers or other kind of drinking accessories. The thought of protecting myself came up, and I registered my trademark, the name, in the US. So you start by looking on registering the trademark on the place where you sell it. Eventually I ended up also registering and protecting myself in China and Hong Kong and Europe. But that's where it all started. And once you get that trademark registered and all processed, you show that to Amazon and say, I am the owner of this product or this brand. Nobody is allowed to sell it. Because what was happening before that trademark was registered was that other people were claiming to sell the exact product and even the exact same brand name.
So there's more than one way to sell on Amazon. Then you can be a reseller, or you can actually be what you do.
Yes, so you could be you could have Amazon as your customer and Amazon is your reseller. That is a vendor. Or you can be your own third-party seller, meaning that you control the listing information and the pricing. So instead of getting an order from Amazon, like a bulk order of 1,000 units or something, you would send in your goods yourself, deciding yourself how much inventory you want to put there, and you would also decide the pricing.
That's I think that this mic got a double.
How's the sound?
How about you swap with me, because I'm asking shorter questions. Try it. Is it better? Is it better?
Is this better?
Yeah? Okay. That's
sounded
better.
a little bit funny for a long time there.
Maybe move the mic a little bit away from you.
Okay.
Does that
That's
sound
fine.
better?
That's
yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, going back to the gig of being a vendor for Amazon or a reseller, and I guess that would mean that you have your own Aussie online store. Is that right? So, but then I understand that there is actually a buy box. Okay.
Yes.
So a buy box. Could you explain to the audience what a buy box is, and that how you positioned yourself to be away from the generic competition?
So that was actually one of the first things I learned. Like, what is the buy box? The buy box is the natural alternative to who's going to deliver this product once the customer clicks add to cart. So if somebody searches for a product on Amazon and decide, I like this one, there's a price and there's this add to cart button. Once they press on add to cart, behind that there's a seller. The consumer, or you who buy it, normally don't think so much about it. You just look at the product, look at the price, look at the reviews, etc. You don't really know who's the seller behind it. Maybe everybody thinks it's Amazon, I don't know. But the fact is that if you're selling a generic product, everybody can sell it. You can register online today, and if you see that there's a black coffee cup for sale that is not branded, you could practically go online and sell it. And it becomes a race to the bottom in regards to the price. The lowest price wins the buy box. So when you do your private label, you protect yourself, making it impossible for others to claim that they sell the exact product as you control the pricing. And that is the whole benefit of it. Private label and price control.
And that was always the positioning that you took when you started with Amazon. You never did a generic sale. You always did a private label from the beginning.
From day one.
From day one. And was that actually, in terms of your trademarking, did you immediately jump into your trademarking on day one, or it was later?
later. I needed to see, because registering a trademark, there's a cost associated with it. So you don't want to spend your money on things that you don't know is going to pay back. Right? So you'd rather spend that on inventory. But once I saw that there was a continuous sales velocity and that I could kind of build on that product to create a product line, create a brand around it, then there was no question about it. Go register the trademark as soon as possible.
So you started to evolve from the wine openers to bottle openers, and then how many, in the end, in that brand that you built, how many products did you actually turn?
I can say that was relatively small compared to other people in this room, I know that. I had about 60 different products in the range, but all of those 60 products I came up with by myself, by own research, and delegating the tasks.
So when you actually exited, it was 60 products that you had?
Yes.
Okay. Going back one, when you're talking about the price points, you actually then, did you position yourself to do the multiplying effect of $6 times by 3 for the wine openers, or did you reduce it just so that then the dollar cost averaging of each of those would be cheaper than your competition? How did you play it?
I had a thumb rule from the beginning that it should be multiplied by 10. If I bought something for $1, I should be able to sell it for 10 US. Because if you sell something for 10 US or X US, that's not the amount of money you will get from Amazon. They will deduct their commissions and fees. So your net gain is much lower. So I got this thumb rule, like if I multiply by 10, I'm safe.
And did you have to then worry about taxation and all the other things with the Amazon platform?
And no, I registered the account with my Hong Kong limited company and was considered an overseas business. So I reported my profit, company profit gains here in Hong Kong.
So Amazon has 12 markets?
14, I think.
14 now? Which and why did you enter into the US market first?
The biggest market and the lowest barrier of entry.
And it actually is a point where I would have thought that it's reached a saturation point with so many products, and how many is it? 3.5 million resellers.
No, 3.5 million.
Registered
yeah.
sellers.
So, yes, exactly. But those accounts are not all active, of course. So it sounds a lot, and there are many people have multiple accounts, so it's not really representative of the reality. But the fact is, yes, more people want to go online and sell, but at the same time, the market grows. I mean, the US, Amazon in the US had a sales revenue of $230 billion in 2018, and that is something that's growing by 25-30% on a year-to-year basis. So although there are more competitors going out there and more people selling, the market is growing, and that trend is not going to change.
So there is still room and opportunity for newcomers, new players to actually get into the game.
I would say definitely yes.
Yeah, and if they were to choose the market, I mean, there's some, I guess, in some of the third world countries, such as India, which is actually becoming a bit more affluent with more disposable income, would it be then recommended to go to another market rather than the US market?
I'm not so familiar with the Indian market, and I would personally stay away because I don't know the culture and the customs and what they're really interested in. I think that the importing procedures are a little bit complicated. But yes, definitely look outside of the US, especially Europe. After US, Germany and UK are huge markets. And if you know how to speak German, then you have a very good advantage because your competition probably can't. I mean, if we're looking at the Chinese sellers. And if you speak Spanish, why don't you look at the Spanish market? I mean, here we have a multilingual person, so you have many opportunities. So yeah, it's not like go with US or don't do anything. There's each and every marketplace where Amazon exists today is growing. And the higher the entry barrier is, like Europe, you need to register for VAT, and other sophisticated filing systems compared to the US, then there's less competition. and there's more opportunities.
So I guess you'd really have to position yourself wisely in order to know that that market is worthy for you to actually go into. Is that something that you do as part of your consultancy work?
Yes, so there are tools out there and also knowledgeable people who can help you navigate in order to find out product opportunities, see where's the traffic, where's the sales. If I would step into this and start competing, what can I expect? I mean, it's better to know what's going to be in the room when you step in there except not knowing. And today there are software tools that you can use in order to get that kind of estimations.
So in terms of your logistics and sourcing, because obviously you talked about multiple factories, what was your methodology in order to be able to keep control, keep inventory, liaise with the multiple factories, and then package everything into one? And then what did you do in order to send it out? And was it a direct sale from China to the end user, or did you have a hub?
Many questions there.
Sorry. So when you talk about the sourcing?
Yeah, the sourcing part. Initially, I would do the product research or the supplier research online myself. Eventually, as the business grew and I had to kind of juggle multiple factories, I would go out and hire a sourcing agent. Excuse me. And there are plenty of sourcing agents there to do your footwork for you for reasonable money. And that way you can also scale and you can have more people work for you at the same time. You should focus on sales and marketing and those things that you're good at. And there are people who can talk the local language in China that can help you and become your partner. And I highly recommend to work with sourcing agents and try to develop a long-term relationships with them. Be careful, of course, don't give out too many secrets to begin with. I mean, try them out. It's like every other relationship. You have to test and meet them in person and build that trust. But once you get that cooperation going, there is no limits to it. They will even come up with ideas eventually to you and say, hey, have you been looking into this? What do you think about that? Some of the products I was selling and were very successful wasn't my ideas from the beginning. It was actually from my sourcing agent, who got kind of interested in helping the whole business.
Nice. So they didn't want a piece of the pie. They were just happy with, you must have remunerated them quite well for them to have been status quo.
We had a few dinners, we had a lot of fun, yeah.
So in terms of the shipping across to the end user, did you actually then have it sent, and were there customs or limitations, import, licenses, and all the rest of the formalities through government red tape to get to the end user?
Okay, so there's two ways of selling on Amazon. There's something called FBM, which stands for Fulfilled by Merchant, and FBA, which stands for Fulfilled by Amazon. And one of the main reasons for Amazon's growth is this last one, FBA. That means that they store the goods for you. So instead of you sending the product directly to the buyer with the FBM program, you will only make sure that the product is available in Amazon stock. So once the customer orders on the marketplace, Amazon takes care of the last leg delivery. They do the final pick and pack and ship it directly to the customer. And that is very convenient for customers, because if they have a complaint or they have any kind of issue with their order, they can easily raise a return or a refund. So Amazon handles all of that. And that is one of the key points in order to scale up a business. Instead of me running to the post office and packing the stuff, Amazon does everything for you. Of course, against the fee, but I'll just study the sales. I'll make sure that my inventory planning is correct, and I order larger quantities from the factory and just make sure that I ship it to one point.
And does that also affect, I guess, if you've got your own brand, then it doesn't matter that you're actually going to be overridden in a buy box. But if it was that it was the FBA with a product, that you would have a priority over an FBM, is that right?
So if we were to sell the same generic product, that means that we can be on the same listing, and I have FBA and you sell FBM for the same pricing, I will be prioritized because Amazon makes more money on me, so I will get the Bibles.
That's interesting. So it's good to know the logic behind it. And if there was, so from the factory in Hong Kong, you would actually just send it to their warehouse in the US, and the rest of it they will take care of.
That's correct. I will initiate a instruction to Amazon to tell them that I'm going to send in 1,000 wine openers, and they will calculate based on their sales data where I should ship it. So they say, ship it to this California warehouse address. So I would tell my manufacturer or logistics company, this is the address where you're going to ship everything.
Fabulous. So so we've gone through the whole cycle, and one last thing would be about how did you manage to sell your business?
So I was attending a event in Hong Kong called Global Sources Summit, which is coming up now in April, and I think we're going to talk about that later. We have a lucky draw for a ticket of it. And there's a lot of speakers on that event. It's a 3-day event for Amazon sellers, and there was a broker specialized on online businesses. And I was just curious. I was not looking to sell my business. I mean, I didn't sell my business, honestly. I sold the brand, right? So I kept my business, but I sold the brand, which was the worth of everything I built. So I came across this broker, and we were discussing, and I ended up sending in all the information I had about myself, about the company I built the last couple of years. And they came back and said, if we list this on our marketplace, this is the price that you can expect. And at the time, I was kind of, okay, either I have to grow this business, or I'll take this opportunity and close the circle and just exit. Because it's probably going to be very easy to step back in or do something else with Amazon.
And right now, just to last 2 questions before we put it to the floor, is that you actually are still, you have an Amazon, you are still a reseller?
Yes, so I have accounts on these important marketplaces in the US, UK, and Germany, selling products, but not really a brand in the same extent I did before. Now it's more like trying out techniques and seeing how to sell, because the Amazon world is changing all the time. Whatever was applicable last month might not be working today. So you kind of have to stay in the game, ahead of the curve, because if you stand by the sidelines, it's very easy to lose.
So your consulting business would be, you're really hands-on, you are on the pulse and breathing it and sleeping it every day.
That's all I do.
So this is a great way. So I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to learn a DIY online, but there's a lot of things in the back scene, just like we talked about the buy box, and people wouldn't have actually know how the back scenes work. So these are a couple of accelerated springboard values, I guess, for your services as well.
Yes, and there's plenty of information to both read and watch online. And sometimes even I, who know that this might be a waste of time, I still end up watching it. Because I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything out. And that is kind of difficult to filter through. Where should I spend my time to learn? And that's where I think it's very important to network with other fellow Amazon sellers, be part of the communities, group chats, masterminds, attend the exhibitions, be on an event like this. That's the best way to stay informed. Because whatever was posted on YouTube last month or in some kind of course or so, some people end up spending thousands and thousands of US dollars on a course that once it's finished is not anymore any secret or not anymore anything that's going to make you successful.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for all your answers. And now I would like to have the audience ask questions. why don't you just... Oh, somebody's bringing the mic.
Thanks, Peter. Just a quick question. On the FBA, when you're actually sending the inventory over, you're actually buying that yourself and sending it over versus I've heard the term drop shipping, where you're not actually holding inventory yourself in a way. What's the kind of difference between those two things? And what would you recommend?
Yeah, so the main difference between dropshipping and FBA business is it's more cash intense in order to stay in the FBA game, of course, because you have to pay your supplier with whatever payment terms you come to agree with. But in general terms, you pay for the goods and then you ship it to Amazon and you sell it off one by one. Dropshipping, you buy it when you get the order, and it's going to be shipped from factory directly to, or any other place directly to the buyer. So you don't tie your cash up in inventory.
So is there an advantage to doing it one way when you're starting out versus the other, just that the cash is not?
Yeah, so with Amazon is that they have such a large customer base. If you're doing your own drop shipping site, you have to make sure that the traffic comes to your site and people will find it, and then they would wait for weeks or maybe months to get the product. Versus they go on to Amazon, where there's a bunch of traffic and they actually promote your product, and the customer knows that once they place the order, they get delivery within 24 hours, 48 hours, or whatever. And if they have joined the Prime program, which is actually 100 million people, or 100 million accounts have Prime. Does everybody know what Prime is? There's a lot of nodding head. Okay, so you know, there's 100 million, and that is something that Amazon continues to work with. Offer Prime members more benefits, more services to kind of build a lifetime value with the client. So if you work with FBA, all the Prime members get the juice of it.
Hi Peter, your talk today was so informative and very, very helpful. So my question is about stocking. I think it's kind of in conjunction with what she was saying. So at what point did you start scaling and deciding how much to stock in the Amazon sort of site? And how did you sort of progress from X amount to, how did you scale it and how did you increase your stocking?
That's very difficult to know in the beginning because you don't know how much sales you're going to get.
Exactly.
So often when you work with factories in China, they have an MOQ, minimum order quantity. Let's say it's 500 pieces or sometimes 2,000 pieces, even more depending on the value of the goods. So in the beginning I end up buying MOQs unless it's like a sample order or so. And once the sales start picking up, then you can kind of calculate how long will it take for me to restock if I sell on this pace. So I begin with MOQ, and then I will come back to suppliers and start negotiating larger quantities and place larger orders so that I don't have to reorder every month or every second month.
So that's a bit dangerous because let's say the product doesn't work, then you have all of this inventory that's probably going to turn into a loss. And my second question is, the first question was about the loss, and the second question is, what about Amazon? Do they have a minimum requirement of how much product that needs to be stocked with them?
No, they don't. You can basically send in one unit.
Okay. And the second question is about the loss.
Yes, there's always a risk associated with it. That's why your initial research to see the demand is very important to do. The better research you do, and the more you know before, the lower your risk.
I have one more question, but I want to ask it right now. Oh, can I go ahead? Okay. It's about branding. So you were saying that everything changes every month, like things can change overnight. And you said you started off like sort of branding and then trademarking your products. And then you said now you're a reseller. So what do you think is the current trend? Is it sort of branding? Would that work better or reselling?
Branding is building an asset, so depending a little bit on what your own goal is. Are you building something long-term or short-term? I believe branding in the long run is something that is more interesting. Hope it answered your question.
It did, yes.
Thank you.
Hi. Back here.
Oh,
Very interesting talk on both sides. Thank you for the talk and thank you so much for the insightful questions. I'm very curious about marketing. Getting a product up on Amazon is one piece of it. How do you get consumers to actually buy it? Are you doing search engine optimization? Are you using Amazon ads? How do you make sure that customers see your product and that it actually appears when they're looking for the product that they want?
highly relevant and strictly tied to success. I mean, if you do your research, you will come up with what kind of keywords or search terms are bringing that demand in. So when you create your product listing, it's very important that your sales copy includes those high volume keywords. So the foundation is your product listing, sales copy and images to make it attractive. Once the customer finds your product on Amazon, then it converts to a sale. But before you get that initial traction, then advertising is something on the Amazon platform, which is a big business and recommended, and also off Amazon advertising, for example, Instagram or Facebook or so. So advertising together with your organic advertising is important.
Peter, hey, over here.
Hey there, hi Jason.
Good to finally meet you. Just curious, when you send a product into Amazon, quite often talk to a lot of sellers. At what they mentioned they send like one product in, doesn't work. They send a second product in, and it's their big earner. So for you, at what point, how many times did you try before you had like what you feel like was a hot seller, or was it just the first one off?
Oh, you mean like, okay, how many products I tried before it took off?
Yeah.
I was a little bit lucky, so my first product took off, but the second didn't. But the third did, and so on and so on. I mean, the more I stayed in, and the more eager I was to get more offers there, I realized that from every 5 products I was put up there, maybe 2 would actually be interesting. And that could be different factors. It could mean that the competition, I underestimated the competition, or I overestimated the sales volumes, or my product offer was not just good enough. Hello.
I would like to know more about your experience with sourcing agents and how that relationship develops. Like for instance, from the beginning, what's the deal? And later on, how can you make it stronger? Like what kind of value can you offer? Or in your personal experience with the sourcing agents, how you have worked for?
So there are probably, very good question, there are probably many different ways of working with sourcing agents. My deal with them was often that I would pay them a percentage on top of the buying price I had from the factory. So let's say I had a factory order which was worth $20,000 US. I would then agree with the sourcing agent what percentage they should have on top of that. Might be 1%, 2%, or 3%, depends a little bit on the value. For them to have the contact with the factory, to follow up with the factory, make the quality control with the factory, arrange the logistics, etc. So for them, it might not look like they have a lot of money in it in the beginning, but often sourcing agents look at it in a bigger picture, that they will have more business. And eventually that will all add up to kind of a good business for them.
And then you keep several sourcing agents in different areas of China where the factories are nearby or one that goes everywhere.
So I would have a main sourcing agent in Guangdong, but if I was going up to Ningbo or Hangzhou or so to make business up there, I would try to find a local sourcing agent that speaks the local language.
Yeah, hi. You mentioned a lot about kind of research. How do you feel about these kind of tools like Jungle Scout and some of these other tools to find products? And when you're looking at those tools, what are the key metrics that jump out at you when you say that, you know, this is something that you should pursue?
So today there are several softwares you can use, like you mentioned, Jungle Scout or Helium 10 or other, that saves you a lot of work, manual research work. Be careful with those, they are all estimates. None of them have real data from Amazon, because that's data that Amazon keeps for themselves. But these softwares are pretty sophisticated, and they kind of scrape the system all over and over and over and over. So look on the figures not only at one point, revisit and look again if the sales volume that they estimate are the same 1 week from now, 2 weeks from now, or depending on seasonality. So it's very important to kind of track products for a while and not just go on your first instinct.
So it's sales volume and what other metrics would you say?
So those softwares will give you search volumes. They will even give you sales estimates in terms of how many units does this product sell this month, or on average, or sales revenue. And they will also give you another more data, which is easy to overview. How many customer reviews does that product have? What is the rating level of it? 3-star, 5-star? It gives you all in a kind of comprehensive one picture view.
So the magic is to look for like high volume but then no competition.
Yeah, that's kind of the secret formula. You have to figure out what is high volume, high demand, continuity, and also where's the competition doing a bad job. What can you do better?
Hi Peter, this is Neetu. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. I have a question in regard when you say study, like do your study, do your research on the product before you put it out in the market. Do you like look at the overall market, like in the US, what is trending, or do you do the research based on what is selling on Amazon? And you said even you rely on some of your sourcing company's information. So do you tell your sourcing company information that you're going to be selling this product to the US or Europe, and they give you the idea, or they just help you source where you can actually have this product made in China? How does it go? Because I know from certain people that you might have import duty for certain products. Do you even have to research on that, or does the sourcing company tell you that information?
I would do it normally when it comes to import tariffs, etc. They normally don't always know what's going on and whether I'm going to sell this in the US or in Europe. But to answer one of your questions is that I would be very specific on what I want them to look for. I would tell them that this is the product, this is the product specification, these are the images. Please find me a factory or a few factories, 3, 5, maybe 7, 8 alternatives, and establish a connection with them, look for samples, get some pricing, and then from there we'll move on.
Hi. Hey Peter, thanks for the sharing. I just have like 2 questions. Should I ask them one by one?
Up to you.
Okay, so I'll ask them one by one. So my first question is kind of an add-on to that gentleman's question, which is, so you said that you have a one-time success, and the second time you fail, and the third time you fail when you choose like the product results. And my question is, in terms of those products that didn't work out, how do you deal with them? Like you just dispose them? Or?
No, I would, initially I would think that the product will sell in a certain velocity at a certain price. If that doesn't become the reality, I would lower the price and kind of eventually decide that once this is out of stock, I will not reorder it.
Got it.
But it's ended up sometimes, of course, that it didn't move at all, and I had to give it away to charity or something else.
And my second question is, when you check for the seasonalities of the products that you plan to sell in the future, which websites do you actually look for? Like, do you have a website in your mind that you always go to that website and check that? For example, like historical price for some specific products that have,
So the softwares that we mentioned before, Jungle Scout and Helium 10, they have that kind of information, sales history, price history, etc. But there are also other program software like Keepa.
Alright. Okay, I'll ask you later. But my question is, that website, do they have prices in both U.S. and China, or only like Amazon only, or do they include Alibaba price?
So if you look on Amazon.com, then it's the US pricing. If you look on Amazon.co.uk, that's the UK pricing in British pounds.
But if they want to look for the historical prices, like November.
Yeah, you go onto the platform together with the software.
Got it. Okay, got it.
So you have your software.
Right,
You
yeah,
go onto
right.
Yes, hello. Well, we're thinking to open an e-commerce in Amazon in Germany, as well as in America. We already have one friend in America, and she sold the business as well. But what's the big difference between selling in Amazon America in terms of regulations with Germany? Because I don't know about taxes or the registration, or it's easier to do it in Germany, or it's more complicated? What about the importation things, or in terms of regulations?
Okay, so do you have a Hong Kong company registered, or where is your company?
No, we're going to start a new one.
You're going to start, okay. So whoever brings in goods into Europe needs to pay import duties and something called VAT, value-added tax. And in Europe, when you import the goods to Europe, you have to have a registration number with the local authorities. So if you want to sell in Germany, you need a German number. If you want to store your goods in the UK and sell in UK, you need a UK number. So if you want to sell on all marketplaces in Europe, just 5, you need 5 VAT numbers. And each and every country requires their VAT filing, meaning that whatever you sell, how much you sell, you have to tell the local authorities, this is what I sold, and you have to pay that tax. In the US, it's much easier. You don't have the same process.
You pay more taxes in Germany.
And it's actually not taxes, it's something called value-added tax, which is kind of two. From the consumer perspective, if they purchase something online in Germany, the price that is presented to them includes all the costs, all the sales taxes, etc. You as a seller is responsible to report that sale. In the US, if you noticed, if you buy something, sales tax is added onto that. And depending on which state, is different taxes. So it's different systems in the US and Europe. I think we can discuss this because it's a little bit complicated to think.
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
Good to see you.
Good to see you
here. A couple questions. First, when you have a Hong Kong entity to which you sell internationally, how long did it take you to get offshore exemption from IRD? Because usually that takes a lot of time and it's quite cumbersome.
So in my case, I am Hong Kong resident. I have expenses in Hong Kong, so I pay taxes in Hong Kong. That means I am not in the offshore tax exemption.
Yeah, but you sell with the Hong Kong company in US, right? So you're not paying profit tax on your US income, but you do need to provide to IRD all kinds of statements to show that predominantly the income that you generate is in Hong Kong. What portion of the income is generated in Hong Kong and what portion of the income is generated abroad? And that process can take many months, at least 6, and it can be very complicated.
Yeah, I didn't get involved in that, and that was something that I had to deal with when I was selling on Amazon, or when I'm selling on Amazon in the US now. I really don't know exactly which part you mean. Are you a US company or are you a Hong Kong company?
Hong Kong company selling overseas.
Yeah.
So
you make your profit gains in Hong Kong.
Sure, but you're not supposed. Technically, you don't pay profit on income that is outside of Hong Kong.
You have your cost over here, so.
So
So usually, like for you, if you have an office in Hong Kong, you have expenses here. So it's very difficult to prove that you don't really have the business activity here. So you need to prove to the IRB that like you don't really have a business presence in Hong Kong. So even your profits is generated outside Hong Kong, you're selling to like to German, to US, but you have your office in Hong Kong. You are managing your like sourcing in here. You have transaction here. Usually, you can't really apply for the offshore tax claim, and yes, it takes time. I think so. I think you pay the corporate tax, right?
Yes, of course.
Hi, Peter. Hi. Quick question. So, when you use FBA and you ship your goods over from China to the US or Amazon to sell, is there a maximum quantity or recommended quantity of product that you need to sell? Do I produce 100,000 wine openers and send them across?
Don't do that.
And a follow-up, what happens if I sell across 2,000 products and they don't sell by the end of the year or by the end of 5 years? Do they toss them out? Do I need to reclaim them? What happens with goods with Amazon that are not sold in a timely fashion?
So when you start up your own account, you have a limitation on how much you are allowed to send in. They don't want to be overstocked. I mean, they have physical limitations, right? And if your product is sent in and it doesn't turn out to sell, it's kind of collecting dust, they will start charging you a monthly fee. And after 6 months, they will start charging you something called long-term storage fee. So always look at an alternative storage place, a third-party fulfillment center, to use as a backup, either to remove goods or to have it shipped in partially.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Margaret. Although it's very nice to hear all those things, which is the current trend. I'm looking into the future. I'm trying to build an e-commerce startup which is based for gifting. It's art of gifting, where we try to find out what the other party wants as a gift, rather than what we want to push in. And my question here is, I'm researching more on the e-commerce portals today, and going forward, what would be the trend? Because like one portal I saw in India was Easy Mail, where every content is in video. There is no graphics, no simple content now. It's only all the products are on videos. So how soon you think such kind of a change is going to happen on Amazon also? If it is going to happen.
I'm sorry, I didn't really get your question there, because I don't know the Indian market and which marketplace you refer to there. Sorry.
My question is very simple. Any market, now that the technology is moving fast, we have more storage and more bandwidth coming in. So the graphic images are changing to videos now. And even on e-commerce markets, we see a lot of video being posted. On the product side, the product specification, how it looks in different dimensions, in different directions. So, because then now graphic and creating content with simple is still cheaper. Not everyone there can do it, probably with little help. But as you go on, it has to be more complex. When you talk about selling by videos, how soon is it going to happen? Or is it already started on Amazon?
Like I said before, a lot of things change on Amazon from month to month, so you really have to stay informed and see the trends. And follow communities, read and see whatever you can to see how to predict that kind of future.
So currently you're not doing anything with video or selling.
Are you using videos on Amazon?
Oh yes, of course. Yes, of course. A video is playing a bigger and bigger part. But if you as a seller want to upload a video for your product, you need this brand registry, which means you need a trademark. So there are certain features and functions that you get access to if you are a brand owner versus you are not a brand owner. And definitely video is a very important part of this. Sorry I didn't get the question from the beginning.
Okay. So my question is it to have a more video content coming in,
Going forward, or?
Yes, including live streaming and everything that interacts with the audience.
Hi. Another question for me. So if you've got a product that's available on AliExpress, for example, is there any reason for so let's say there's a product available on AliExpress. Let's say you take that product, you rebrand it, you repackage it, and you put a margin on top. Is there any reason for a consumer to come to you apart from just go to AliExpress and get it for a cheaper price? What justifies that margin for a consumer, that if you're going to repackage it and rebrand it for yourself, that they're just going to buy it generically from Alibaba for 30% less?
With those customers who know and are willing to wait, and they know that they can buy from a reliable source on AliExpress, they probably do. Versus they go to somebody that they can feel is like a local seller, like on Amazon platform, and they know that they get the customer service. If there's any product, they know where to turn. There's always a risk buying on Alibaba or AliExpress that if you have an issue with your delivery, that issue will not be addressed by the supplier.
Can we wrap up to have maybe last 3 questions, and that's it?
And you will make it available to call you as well. So.
Yes, so I think this is important. There's a lot of questions. I would love to answer all of them. I have offered to Startup Grind to anyone who's here today to have a free 15-minute consulting call with me.
1-5.
1-5. Don't worry, the software will cut it off. No. So if you go onto my website, frostlimited.com, or you can Google Amazon Consultancy in Hong Kong, go to Frost Limited, book a call, and there's an available time slot. Any day that you feel free, please book a call and we'll discuss.
We will send out an email to everybody who's here, so you can just click in to your calendar.
Yes, exactly. Jens will be so nice and follow up this event today, and the information is also given there.
So was there the last 3 questions?
Okay, so
hi, Kenneth.
So I got one question, but because I asked a question, I just want to say I did actually join that 15 call last time if you remember, and then until today it's 2 weeks already, and I just want to say thank you. I never really say thank you to you. I mean, first of all, I never meet Alex, I never meet the amazing Weber here. It's just like right now I'm working with Simon, I mean the one who referred me. So resourceful and then inspiring story here. So thank you so much. So one thing that here that I want to ask say is like maybe everyone here wants to know about this question is like how much money would you start for selling on Amazon, and then why is that? So that would be a really interesting question to explore.
That's all individual from person to person or company to company, but you have to count that it might cost you a few $100 US, if not a few thousand US in terms of inventory and advertising to get started.
Did you want to ask?
This is more of a quick clarification, actually. So you said you actually registered your business in Hong Kong, but when you sell in the US and you're sending the products over, you use that registration number because you need to report a registration number, and then you pay for USD. You also pay
import duties. Yeah, so you have to contact the local authorities in the US, IRS, and tell them that I am Peter Limited Company in Hong Kong. I am going to import this kind of goods. Could you please give me a EIN number? Employment identification number, which is also a social security number or similar in the US, so that the customs can always identify the importer with the goods. And that can be made on the phone in a very quick call with the IRS.
And then you pay the tax.
So upon entry, when the goods are passing through the border, there will be a manifest, there will be some information about what kind of product that it is that I'm importing, and a certain import code or HS code which identifies the product with a certain tariff, and that is paid upon entry.
Peter, quick question to follow up on that. That's if you ship by ship. So if you send your goods by container, right?
what happens if you send them by air? You say air freight, you don't need a PIA number.
Correct. There is an informal way. This is the formal way. Sea and can also be air freight, but there is also an express way. So if you are under a certain declared value, you do not have that. You don't need that number. And that number, I believe, it's $2,500 US or something like that.
For the item, right?
Sorry?
For the item, or whatever.
For the shipment.
So you just make sure you ship less than 4,500 times. If you don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, but that's also probably a lower quantity, so you have to make more regular shipments or more often. That's good.
So thank you very much, Peter. It's been really, really informative. I know that you guys may be running out of time, but absorb what we've actually shared today. List out your questions. Make that 15 minutes call to Peter with a list of your questions, add questions. And I know that his consultancy, he has 3 different parts to his business. He would actually just teach and let go, or teach and co-manage, or teach and manage.
Or fully manage.
Or fully manage. So these are the 3 sort of consultancy, just as a broad overview of what he's offering. But in that 15-minute call, list out your questions and make the best of the time and wisdom that Peter has on hands-on.
Yes, please feel free to reach out to me. And even if it doesn't end up you selling on Amazon, I'm glad to connect anyway.
Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful day.